We're on. Good morning, everybody. It is very chilly Wednesday. In fact, I think it's the coldest morning so far this year. And I thought we needed to bring someone in who'd warm us up. And I'm very, very excited to welcome one of my oldest friends, Kate Turkington. Look at you in all resplendent.
And a very good morning to you and a very good morning to everybody. A chilly morning. It's freezing outside.
Balls of a brass monkey.
It's the coldest morning of the year, and I've had no electricity for 2 days. So,
But you've tarted up very nicely for me.
I have, actually.
You have.
It's amazing.
So you're resplendent in glory. I told somebody the other day that I was at your 90th birthday party.
Definitely.
And they said to me, Kate can't be 90. And when I've met people who are in their 30s and 40s who are already old.
Oh, totally.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
And I told them that whenever I see Kate, I feel like I'm as invigorated as if I was sitting around my 30, 40, 50-year-old friends.
You know, one of the good things about growing old, and there are lots of bad things, A, you get very wise.
Yes.
B, you've done so much. You've done so much and you know so much.
But don't you find when you've done so much and you know so much, that sometimes when people start to say something, you go, oh, God, I know what they're going to say here.
I don't have friends like that. I got rid of those years ago. One of my daughters once said to me, the trouble with you, Mum, is you only like beautiful, intelligent people. And I thought for a bit and I said, yeah, I don't like ugly, stupid people.
Well, who does? Who does, right?
No, and you know, one of the sexiest men I ever met in a very long life.
You didn't have to bring it up now, but
was the writer, John Mortimer. He did Rumple of the Bailey. Do you remember?
I don't.
Ex-judge writes, he was small, he looked a bit like a toad. I was enthralled to him, his wit, the power of his mind. The other one was the English wit writer, Peter Ustinov.
You met Ustinov?
You were absolutely overcome by the wit and the power. And Peter Ustinov, I wasn't present on this occasion, but you know, Lady Chatterley's lover only got banned in the 1960s before you were alive.
That's right.
It's not long, you know, when you think about it. And he had they had a panel on the BBC, and there used to be a woman who regarded herself as the guardian of English morals, Mary Whitehouse. You know, pearls and a cardigan and the hair. You get there. And she was against everything that anybody could get pleasure from. So there was this panel. It was Peter Ustinov, Mary Whitehouse. Can't remember who the host was. And she said to Peter Ustinov in absolute disgust, would you let your daughter read Lady Chatterley's Lover? And he looked at her and he said, Mum, I don't know about that, but I wouldn't let my gamekeeper.
Peter Ustinov was a very interesting man, huh?
And just the power of the mind and the wit. One is entranced. One is entranced by it. And so often, here she is generalizing, because she always generalizes. You meet these beautiful people, not the one with the lip. No,
yeah, these lips that they're doing now, dreadful. Yeah, those,
anyway,
yeah, like fish lips.
Somebody who's genuinely beautiful, and sometimes it doesn't come with brains.
But you did say beautiful and clever.
Yes.
So,
but beauty is also the beauty of the mind.
Yeah, but this is something I was talking to somebody about the other day, and I want you to tell me what you think about this. I think beauty for its own sake is fine.
Yes.
You know, sometimes it's just...
You know, I was thinking about that every night before I go to sleep. First of all, I pat myself on the shoulder and say, well done, body. Then I have this little list of 5 questions I ask myself. What are you grateful for? Well, I'm grateful for so much. You can't believe family, friends, health, everything. And then what was the highlight of your day? And sometimes there isn't like a major highlight. Sometimes I've seen a robin just hopping into my little courtyard, Cape robins. They're so
Beautiful, happy
Cape
little
robin
birds.
Chat. Or you've seen some flowers, or the aloes at the moment, which are breathtaking. That can be a highlight. It doesn't have to be winning the lottery, because I haven't won that yet. No, yet.
Yes, but you will.
And so, what's the highlight? What have you learned today? That's a good one.
So hang on, it's what are you grateful for?
What
What's
are you
your highlight?
grateful for? Highlight. What have you learned? Were you kind to somebody?
Oh,
And then finally, when did you feel most alive? And sometimes you can't answer all those.
I think that's a great way to go to sleep.
It's just like a habit I've always done.
But I suspect you brought up the story because of the robin. I have, just this week, I had a robin in my bathroom. It flew in, and it was stuck in my bathroom, and I had to help it out.
Heavens to
And
Betsy.
they're such
Oh,
pretty
they're
little birds.
gorgeous.
That red chest
And they're
those little eyes with
Ken
the white.
Newman, the great birding guy who did the first bird guys, he always said they're a very confiding little bird.
That's a
And
that's a
isn't that
cute
they-
way of saying
And
it.
bird, as you probably know, I've been president of Santon BirdLife now for about 15 years. I'm not a twitcher. I won't rush off to a bog, a marsh somewhere and see the lesser-throated columbine, titmarch, morph, juvenile. But I do appreciate the
Well,
birds.
my brother is a big birder.
Is he?
He's up to 800 on his list.
Do you know, I've never counted mine.
I'm
it
sure
must
you're
be a
there.
lot.
Because you've seen things like Antarctic birds.
No,
which,
but I don't count those. I only count South African birds in my list.
yeah, but there are a few that you'd only see if you went into the southern
Yes,
Atlantic.
but you know, I don't know how many albatrosses there are. I've seen a lot, but if one came up and bit me, I wouldn't know. Well, a very big one. And you know, BirdLife, which is such an amazing organisation, does so much good. Every year they do what they call a flock. So all the birders, or many birders from South Africa, will go on this outing. But the last 2 years they've been to Marion Island to see all the seabirds. But I suffer from seasickness. I'm seasick on Zoo Lake, so there is no way. And I've done that dreadful crossing from South America to Antarctica, the Drake Passage. That's, the Horn
which
of Africa.
Captain...
Yeah.
So Francis Drake, obviously, it's named
Yes,
after him.
yeah.
But Captain Cook did it.
Exactly. And Gareth, some of those old sailing ships, they never got round the Horn because of the winds and the storms. They tacked back and forward sometimes for months and never actually got round the Horn. But something is going to be bad when you leave Ushuaia, which is a lovely little, like a little alpine town, bottom of South America, southernmost, they say, town in the world, and you put out to sea, and suddenly behind all the rails and the bars everywhere, they put brown paper bags.
Yeah.
So you know it's going to
At least they have the decency to make them brown paper bags. I went on a ship once, and they had clear ones.
Oh.
Not nice. But it's interesting you bring up South America because you were in Patagonia a while ago.
This alpaca tails from Patagonia. I've been to Patagonia twice. I've been to Chile and Patagonia, and last year I was in Argentinian Patagonia. Absolutely wonderful. It's got these huge icebergs. I think the one we sailed to, you go in small boats, was about 40 k's long. And
Good
it's
heavens.
quiet. They switch off the engine. So, and because of the mineral the minerals in the water. There's no living things. You see the odd condor flying overhead, so there's absolute silence, and they ask you for absolute silence. Not many on the boat. All you can hear is the cracking of the eyes. The cracking. And you know, they're bright blue. They're turquoise blue, and it's. But the Great Grey Glacier in Chile and Patagonia is now melting at 100 meters a year.
God.
That's a lot.
And they have those, you don't think of glaciers in the southern hemisphere, but they've got those there too.
Yeah. But I always say to people, if you want to go to Antarctica, and it's on a lot of people's wishes, do it quickly. Do it quickly before it all vanishes, and never go on a Russian ship. Because, mind you, I love the Russians. They're great party animals, most of them. But the Russian ships have a conning tower, so you're higher up, so you're even more liable.
Smashed around.
Yeah.
But Antarctica, I think, is on most people's bucket list because it's a whole continent, and very few people can say they've been there.
Yeah, and they're very good because of the Antarctic Treaty. I think still a ship may only take 400 passengers, not more. And you go from the ship in a rubber duck, a rubber dinghy, in your Wellington boots and your red jackets and your thermal underwear, and as much clothes, like this morning, in fact, in Johannesburg. And just 6 of you at a time. And it is otherworldly. It is quite surreal.
What's the coldest you've ever been?
That's an interesting question.
Because we think geography when we think of cold.
I'm just trying to
I think the coldest I've been is actually
Tibet. Every space camp. Not Tibet. Yes, Tibet. Every space camp, because we went to every space camp from Tibet. And we went. And the first space camp you go to, don't think it's all these glamorous climbers. It's a squalid sort of tented place with children with runny noses and thin dogs running among the tent. But it's high, so you're gasping for breath. And even though we had lots of clothes on, that was freezing. And we were staying in what was called a simple Tibetan hostelry. It was 12 kilometres from every space camp, which we limped along. I think finally we hitched a lift. And there was just a hole in the floor of the ablutions. But we had the best views of Everest, they said, for 17 years. And it was full moon. So we arrived at lunchtime. We sat there drinking warm beer and eating greasy noodles and watched the sun go down and the moon come up. And because the ablutions were not, my mother superior wouldn't have approved. We all went out and weed under Everest in the moonlight. But it was so beautiful. It was so.
Some patch of mountain snow that will always forever be Cape Turkington.
Another time I was in India, and we got up at dawn to see Kachinjunga, which, you know, if you snooze, you lose. There were about 10 of us, and only about 4 of us got up. And it was daughter Tara who said, "Come on, Mum, we've got to go and see Kachinjunga at dawn." Meanwhile, but do it. And that's what I say about travel. When I think now, Gareth, of the places one can't go back to, Tibet. Although I met a couple this week who just come back from Kashmir, and even when I was in Kashmir last, which was about 6 years ago, there were armed troops everywhere, not a woman on the street.
Well, they very nearly broke into open war.
They said every 6 meters, 10 meters, soldiers. But still, Kashmir, which is so beautiful. You've got the lakes and the houseboats made of scented sandalwood that have been carved generations ago. It is, and the mountains, Himalayas, it is so beautiful. But one of the things which we did, you go to see the changing of the guard.
Yeah.
I have to put my coffee down.
Changing
on the
guard.
Pakistan-India border.
Right.
Well, if ever there was an example of machismo, forget South America. They're like peacocks. The Pakistanis are all in black with black ostrich plumes and helmets, and the Indians were all in whatever, and they come up to each other and they goose step,
Yeah.
and it's like a performance. And heaven help, if one missteps or something, and the locals all go and watch. It was quite
Well, that was where the world was focused just a month ago.
exactly.
Because everyone thought that we might have an outbreak of nuclear war between the two, but they've sorted themselves out.
Do you know, Gareth, I'm going into old fart mode. One of my grandsons said to me recently, we were talking in general. It's wonderful having a big family. You can talk about anything. He happens to be a game ranger and he was on leave. So I said to him, I think I told you guys, very portentously, you don't have to look it up because you're a wordsmith. I was look it up. I said, Stephen, you're living on the cusp of history. Trump, the world is changing. Isolation, nation states coming back. And he laughed. He looked at me. He said, Granny, you've been living on the cusp of history for 90 years. Think about it. World War II, Korean War, Vietnam War, Berlin Wall coming down, end of apartheid.
Don't breeze past these, because you told me when we were on the phone to each other the other day that you were in the streets of London on VE Day
I was.
with your parents.
Yes. My mother was that's not emotion. I've just got a frog in my throat from the pollution in China. She was a great one. She was the daughter of a Swedish sea captain. And although they had no money, she had this urge to do things and go up and go. And she got us up.
Doris,
We lived about half an hour by train
is this Doris?
Yes, from the middle of London. And I remember being in Trafalgar Square on V-Day. I was 10. The crowds of people kissing, the joy, the unadulterated joy. And I didn't really understand it because, my parents have shielded us to some, and I,
Well, they had, but you also had been evacuated from
Yes.
London.
I had.
This is a story people don't remember. They may remember because there was an anniversary the other day for VE Day, but you and many children were just packed off. You were given a number, and you were sent off to some country house.
Not even. I think of a fisherman's hut on the Norfolk Broad.
Fisherman's hut. Where were you?
It was one of the most amazing. The Brits really got their act together. In 4 days, 1.5 million children were evacuated from London. Our parents didn't know where we were going. We were put on a train with a parcel label on us, sent off. And I said to my mother, how could you do this? She said they were dropping leaflets from the skies. The Germans are coming. And this is quite interesting, Gareth. I've got teenage grandchildren now who study history. And a couple of them at some stage were studying World War II. And they came down to chat to me. I said, well, I don't know about a survivor, but anyway. And it was all, but Granny, the Nazis, this and that. I said, we didn't even know the word Nazi. It was the Germans we were at war with.
Yeah.
It was the German. We'd never heard of a Nazi. And how history is made by the people who write it. Very often not by the people who make it. And I love the story of Julius Caesar.
Mm-hmm.
Julius Caesar pulled off one of the biggest PR stunts in the world. He was a senator, absolutely on the bones of his arse, as they would say. No money, not doing well. And a bit like Margaret Thatcher, thinks, let's have a war. She had the Falklands War. Let's have a war. It's very good for unifying nations, getting your name known. So he went off to Europe. Think Asterix and Obelix. He went off to Europe. And these little tiny states, sometimes only a few thousand in each, and he conquered them. And then he wrote, still is a textbook. I don't know. I know in British universities, if you're studying Latin, Caesar's Punic Wars.
Right.
And he made out he conquered
Gallic
half
Wars.
of
Gallic
Europe.
Wars.
The Gallic Wars, Punic came, the Gallic Wars. And the rest is history. They believed him, finally became emperor.
He starts the third volume with
Yes. I study it.
Gallia est omni tres in tres partes unis, I think. So
You know, to
Gaul is
do-
divided into three parts.
Gaul's
then-
divided into
And
three
famously,
parts.
when he crosses the Rubicon River, because now he's pulled off this PR stunt, and you know the Romans used to bring back their tributes, so they'd
Yeah.
march all the slaves down the
slaves
street,
and-
and then they'd hand out the loot to all the soldiers, and there'd be a big celebration, and everyone was very impressed with Julius Caesar. He'd ride on an open chariot with a laurel wreath above his head,
Absolutely.
and then of course he said.
Forget blue light brigades.
Yeah,
they
that's-
haven't got
that's-
a clue.
they haven't got anything.
They haven't got
Yeah.
a clue.
And then he got himself elected dictator for life.
Yes,
And
that was his mistake.
that was the mistake. Because as soon as he called himself that, they said, no, actually, we don't like this. And a couple of conspirators got together and made it.
too brutal.
Right.
But you know, girls, when I did an English honours degree. You do it from word go. You don't do it after your undergraduate degree. But to do that, you had to study Latin for a year at university. And luckily, I have a very, very good memory. So I just learnt the text off by heart. But other than
wow.
a mathemat, I couldn't really conjugate. But how helpful it is when you look at language and you see, I can still, because of knowing Latin and French, I can read, or put it this way, I can understand what's going on in a Spanish or Italian newspaper. I can't understand people talking, but if I see, because it's so
Similar.
similar.
But you did. You
similar.
lectured English for a while, too, here in Johannesburg.
Sorry?
You were an English lecturer.
Yes, that fits for years. I had a very anomalous position, of course, because I was head of television, but I was also an academic teaching in the English department. But what was wonderful about that is I could wear an admin hat when I was head of television, academic hat when I was in the English department, because they didn't know what to do with me. I reported directly to the Vice-Chancellor, which was... So, and at my leaving party of it, I had 4 surviving Vice-Chancellors, but it was great because I would do something that I knew probably I shouldn't have done, not for the good of the university, not for the bad, and then say, but I didn't, I'm sorry, I didn't know I was supposed to do that.
The other thing that a lot of people know about you already is that you were on TV right in the early days with the BBC.
In the UK when it was still black and white.
Right, you had your own TV show.
Yeah, several.
In the 60s.
Yeah, the first one was called, I was with the World Service first. The first one was called Late with Kate. It was so late, nobody watched it. I don't think.
What did you do on Late with Kate?
It was mainly political and current affairs stuff. I mean, it was very extraordinary to have a woman doing it in those days.
Absolutely.
And I think it taught me my mistrust of politicians from a very, very early age, and how some, now they've all had the media training, but in those days, I interviewed Enoch Powell, interviewed Harold Wilson. Harold Wilson, and some of our politicians could learn this now. It's very useful to have a prop if you're on television.
Harold Wilson
I've got a cup of coffee, but it isn't a prop. I actually need this.
Harold Wilson had a pipe.
He had a pipe.
Yeah.
He was Harold Wilson was the Prime Minister of England, UK, and he is still the youngest Don ever at Oxford. He was a Don
And
for
they were very
letter
proudly working
22.
class.
And I interviewed him over Rhodesian tiger talks on a barge on the Thames, but he had a pipe which made him look older. You know, it was, and you asked him a difficult question, he stuck on his pipe, looking thoughtful. Meanwhile, the mind, who was very clever, his mind was
Racing around.
going like crazy. But interesting.
Is there anyone you didn't meet that you almost met that you wish you had?
The Rolling Stones ever. I interviewed most of the pop groups, but I missed the...
You missed Mick Jagger and Keith Richards.
I was never a great fan because I was a Beatles fan. I enjoyed their energy. But you know, now, don't know if you saw a couple of nights, 3 nights ago, Paul McCartney joined Bruce Springsteen at a concert somewhere. These two old guys. And Paul McCartney, at 82, had the worst wig you could possibly imagine. It was like almost blonde and ragged. And
do you think he's bald underneath?
And he's such a nice man, but...
You think he's bald?
Oh, I'm damn sure he
I
is.
thought that was his real hair.
Oh, no.
Really? Is it a bad wig?
No way.
Oh, God. All right, you're spoiling everything for me.
One shared a dressing room in Austin, Texas with Dolly Parton.
Oh.
Before she'd had her, such a nice person, before she'd had her big boob operation, and she took her wig off, and she had this lovely, like, bum fluff, just like a newly hatched chick, just all over her head.
Well,
she was such a nice person.
I believe that Dolly Parton, under the wigs, actually has dark hair.
Yes, well, she had blum fur.
And that she goes to the shops like anyone else.
Probably.
And people don't recognize her because she doesn't tart up and she doesn't wear the wigs and she doesn't...
And she's a real person.
Yeah.
She's a genuine person.
Apparently, the most fun is to go and spend a day at Dollywood.
I'm sure.
All right. So we've got Kate Turkington here and we'll be talking nonsense for a little while. I'm just always
Speak for yourself. I'm not talking nonsense.
So we have a lot to talk about. Okay. We also have travel.co.za popping in just now, which is obviously something that Kate can help us out with there too. We sent some people on their first time travel. So they went, a lot of the people who went had never been on a plane before, never been to Cape Town before, saw all the sights and sounds. So it was very exciting for them. First time they'd ever been anywhere. Do you remember when you went somewhere for the first time ever?
Absolutely.
On a plane?
I had just finished university. I had been married for a year. My husband had been in Nigeria. He'd come down from Oxford and taken the job in Nigeria because it was a £60 kit allowance. That was more money than we'd ever seen in our lives. We didn't even know where Nigeria was. So I was to join him. And we had to fly first class.
God, how wonderful.
So BOAC. I had some sort of little hat, might have been a pillbox, white gloves, stockings, and in those days, not tight, so you had suspenders and a suspender belt, stockings, and very unwise. I'd never been on a plane before, and we were flying to Tripoli, a dress with a pleated skirt, which was not a good thing for a long. I don't think I appeared quite so spick and span when I got to Tripoli, got to Kano. In those days, that's in the north of Nigeria. The tribesmen used to come on camels and blow silver trumpets when the planes arrived.
Good heavens.
Absolutely wonderful. And
wow.
I fell in with a couple of crew. We had to spend the night in Tripoli. And I remember none of us went to bed. I was 20 years old. I was 21. None of us went to bed. We just sat up all night talking, putting the world, like we're doing now, talking about everything and anything. That's the only time I've been to Tripoli.
Well, I don't know many people who've been to Tripoli.
But I want
since...
to go for my trip next year, because I do a trip with friends every year. I'm thinking very seriously about Tunisia. Apparently, Romans, the Romans always made themselves so comfortable.
And of course, if you go to Tunisia, because you mentioned it already, the Punic Wars, you could go to what's left of Carthage.
Exactly. And apparently, I'm not quite sure how it's pronounced, Jerba is this beautiful seaside town, gorgeous beaches, no tourists. And I fancy Tunisia, quite fancy.
Are there any places that are too dangerous? For example, I've always been interested in going to Iraq because you've got...
I have, because of the antiquities.
Right, because you could go and visit ancient Babylon and... places like that, which you may have been to.
I'm not prepared to do that.
You haven't been there?
No, I haven't. I'm quite sorry I didn't. And as I was saying, people mustn't save their money till they retire and the kids have gone, because they'll get old and creaky and they may not be able to travel. Go now, take your children.
But you've been saying that for 40 years.
I don't have any money, because anytime we had any money, we travelled and we took the kids.
And Iran?
No, I haven't been to Iran or Iraq. I've been to Pakistan, which is very useful, because when you need something for your phone or you need some gadget, you go to one of the malls and you find a booth in the middle and you start talking cricket with the usually Pakistani guy. They will look after you like you can't believe.
Cricket, huh?
You can't believe. India, love India. Again, that's one of my favourite.
All right, well, we'll save the travel for a moment or two. You told me that you watched the men's final in the French Open on Sunday.
I was a wreck at the end of it, an absolute wreck. I've been alive for a very, very long time. I've been watching tennis for decades. That's the best men's final I have ever seen. It was absolutely brilliant. 3 match points down Alcaraz and 2 sets down. And he manages to win, and he's 22.
Phenomenal.
The only problem is, just as Nadal and Djokovic and Federer dominated the tennis scene for so long, because Sinner and Alcaraz are so young,
they'll be here for
22, 23,
a long time.
It's going to be for years. But then it'll be a good rivalry, and they seem nice kids. They really do.
Well, you must have had a very busy day on Sunday, because you were watching the men's Open, but you also had a granddaughter in the Comrades.
Absolutely. So we had the finish line. She's such a feisty. She's beautiful. She's tiny. As she crossed the finish line, she had her arms up, and I don't know about times, but she did it in 9 hours 47 minutes, which apparently for a first run is amazing. But she said now she's recovered. She's talking about doing it back to back. But sorry, Tessa, I'm thinking great-grandchildren.
I've never understood running or cycling.
Nor me.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, you cycled everywhere, because during World War II, no petrol, no cars, no nothing. You cycled everywhere. You walked everywhere. But one of my very best friends is a knee surgeon, very famous knee surgeon. He plays the bagpipes at my birthday party.
Okay.
And although he's a runner himself, he says he sees all these prospective patients because human knees aren't supposed to be pounding pavements. Even with look, they've got good shoes now. But even so, they're all going to end up like me with 2 replaced knees. And I don't have replaced knees because I'm a runner. It's because I'm old.
Well, you're in remarkable condition. You're in showroom condition, which people will always ask, well, what's your secret? And I think people are just confounded by longevity. They think longevity is a miraculous thing.
But I also think old people let themselves get old. That sounds very harsh, but people suddenly, when they're in their late 60s or something, suddenly decide they're old and they go off to retirement villages where everybody's old. And it's not all of them. I have, but looking at it, I only have 2 friends in their 80s who are both younger than me. All my friends like you are much younger.
But you...
Me.
Yeah, well, I think there are people who are in their 30s who are already old up here.
Totally.
Right? And to me, there's no point in wishing that you were older than you are or not being happy about what you've got. And most people, I think, who are happy, do things like what you told us just now you do every night before you go to sleep, that you rattle off 5 things, 5 questions about what you're grateful for and have I been kind to someone today? And these are very simple things to live by.
Yeah.
There's no secret.
I don't know whether it's I have a superb memory. I really do. I don't remember names. It's so interesting. I can remember when I was 3, 4, the 6 months I was evacuated, I have absolutely no memory of. Now, our shrink would say it's classic block out. I have absolutely no memory. I remember being put on the train with the paper parcel label, and I remember coming home to a new house. But otherwise, absolutely nothing. Interesting.
Was your family house destroyed?
No.
Was it bombed?
It may well have been. My father, who was a welder, had got a job at de Havilland's aircraft factory in Hertfordshire, so we moved out of the bad part of... But, Gareth, you were talking about historical occasions. It's just recently been D-Day.
Right.
D-Day, for people who don't know, was when the Allied invasion of Europe took place. And because we lived by an aerodrome, June the 6th was the day of the invasion, my mother took us into the garden early. It was a lovely June day. And to me, as a little girl, it seemed as if the sky was black with aeroplanes.
My God.
Wave after wave
My
after
God.
wave of Allied bombers was going over too. And there was a corollary to that story, because a few years ago I was asked to talk at a D-Day anniversary at one of the country clubs, and 2 Spitfires flew overhead. Must have been about 10 years ago. And I burst into tears. Totally out of the
phenomenal
blue. Totally out of the blue. But aren't we lucky to have memories? You don't want riches. You don't want a fancy car. You know, Bruce Whitfield once asked me, I was doing his money show, I'm not a good person because I don't have money and I'm not bothered. I've got a roof over my head, I've got a family, I've got a dog, I've got a car.
That's all you need.
He said to me finally, and I adore Bruce, but he said to me finally, what would you do if a red Maserati drew up beside you at the traffic lights? What would you say? I said, how vulgar.
Parvenu.
Totally.
So what would you do with R1 million if you had
Give it away.
Give it away.
Yeah. Give some to family. Oh, I've got to tell you a lovely story.
Yeah.
A friend of mine drives an awful old Ford truck. And about 4 or 5 years ago, she came to see me. About 5 years ago, before I did the final downsizing thing, when I lived in Midrand. And she arrived in a brand new truck. And I said, but Wendy, brand new truck. She said, it's a bit of a story. It's not mine. It's my son-in-law's. Oh, says I. How come? Because he's a butcher. I know he doesn't have any money. He had an Irish aunt called Aunt Rose. And Aunt Rose was a bit otherwise and a wee bit away with the fairies, and the whole family had neglected her and really ignored her and turned her out. But Donovan would take her shopping and always kept up with her because he liked her. Anyway, she gets hold of him one day and says, I've had this call from Santon, the lottery. And he thinks, oh, sure, it's a joke
she's
or whatever.
lost her mind.
Anyway, they kept phoning and sending a message. He takes her into the lottery. I don't know if it's still in Santon. She'd won 34 million rand. This is a true story. Suddenly, all the relatives came out of the woodwork.
Oh, I'm sure. Suddenly they were all their best friends.
Came out of the woodwork. They came from Ireland. They came over. The story got even worse or better. Auntie Rose got cancer. She got pancreatic cancer about 3 months after winning the lottery.
Ugh.
And she died. She left all the money to a cat home. That is,
cat's home.
You can't make up my stories. You can't make up my stories. So, but all they got, Donovan got a new truck. That was all that came out of
And the rest went to the cat's home.
Went to some kind of pits. Maybe SPCA. My friend Wendy tells it went to a cat's home.
We hear you hear stories about people who leave their money to the cat's home.
No.
I didn't know it actually happened.
Well, it was animals. It wasn't
my
people.
mother often threatens. She says, if you're not nice to me, I'll leave everything to the cat's home.
I don't have anything to leave, so. But I do say, I sit with my grandchildren, and I say, now, when I'm dead, I'd like you to have that picture, or. But Gareth, it's so healthy.
Yeah, it is.
Because
It's very normal.
I know somebody who's in her 80s, who's perfectly well and healthy, who won't talk about death, it's an absolute taboo subject, where I'm always saying, when I'm dead, so-and-so, why not?
Well,
I try not to drop dead when I'm sitting on this very comfy sofa.
I sometimes tell people about your former husband, Alan's wake,
Yes.
which I was at.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it was the most wonderful day, and everybody was terribly happy, and there were happy stories, and all the grandchildren said what they loved about him.
I once went to a wake in Sligo in the west of Ireland that lasted for 3 days, but there's a pretty formulaic invitation, and it says, bring something to eat, something to drink, and something to say.
Lovely.
Perfect.
That's what you want.
Perfect.
I was at a memorial on Saturday for,
Yes.
you remember Darren Scott?
I was actually at Wanderers for this. I was at a birthday party.
Okay. Well, I didn't go to the wake afterwards. I probably should have. But it was happy. It was a happy thing.
Of course.
A life well lived. You're celebrating someone a lot of people
Exactly.
knew. Sometimes you
Exactly.
only meet the people that you didn't know in their lives at the funeral.
Exactly.
Sometimes
Some people you'd never want to meet again.
Well, it's always funny to me that you have these funerals and stories that come out of them where the wife meets the other wife or the girlfriend.
I've just come back from hot air ballooning over Turkey. And
did you go to
Cappadocia?
Cappadocia, yeah.
It was wonderful. Wonderful. Anyway,
Is it as pretty as they say it is?
Sorry?
Is it as pretty as they say it is?
Oh, it's not pretty, it's surreal. They say fairy chimneys, and you think fairy chimneys. They're higher than Michelangelo
Good
in
heavens, okay.
Santon.
All right.
They're huge, and you float over that dawn with 100 other balloons as the dawn comes up. Among this, it's more like a moon, it's more like surreal, or it's absolutely beautiful. But going back to wakes, I said to my family and the people I was with, listen, if I fall off my perch or fall out of a balloon, you're not to take once you're over 80, it's very hard to get travel insurance. So I was just laying the groundwork. I said, don't bring the body back. It's going to be too expensive. Go to a Turkish crematorium. Turkey, as you know, has beautiful pottery. Each of you buy a beautiful pot. You can each have some of the ashes. Then you can bring them back here. But what a sensible! And some of them are going, "Oh, Kate, but it's sensible."
Yes, I agree.
It's sensible, and it would have been interesting to see the inside of a Turkish Did you have a Turkish
pot.
bath when you were in Turkey?
I did. I went in Istanbul to a
Hammam.
proper hammam.
Yeah.
You get massaged and they wash you with those pile foam all over you.
We did that.
It's incredible.
You probably went to the one, the 500-year-old one, where they lay you out stark naked on a slab, like a piece of cod.
Right.
You're on a slab. And, I mean, the women who work there, their grandmothers, their great-grandmothers, they're Roman, they be there, and they're so businesslike and professional. And some of my friends said, they didn't know about taking everything off. I said,
they don't
won't
care.
worry you.
They're
They
not
don't
worried.
care.
No.
It was wonderful. And they wash your hair. They put you between their knees and wash their hair.
It's probably the first. It's probably the first time I've been washed since I was a baby.
Exactly.
Like that.
And it's comforting.
It is.
Quite comforting.
And I thought about that marble slab that they put me on, and I thought, this could come from a Roman temple.
It had been there for 500 years on the dome, a beautiful dome above you. Oh, it was stunning. I'd done it before, and I talked all my friends into doing it.
Turkey is very, very cool. I think Turkey's an underestimated destination, especially for South Africans.
Totally.
Because you can afford to go. It's almost 1-to-1.
Exactly.
Was at the time I went, and it's
now,
charming, and the food's lovely, and the people are lovely, and it's great.
The culture, I mean, at one stage I was leaning up against a 1600-year-old Roman wall, which blends seamlessly into a flower shop, which blends seamlessly into a Greek. It's the most wonderful, wonderful city.
Well, there's
wonderful public transport. Wonderful. We went on the metro, we took trams, we took buses.
Much better than
traffic.
the traffic's
makes
terrible.
Johannesburg look like Pofadder. I mean, not that I've ever been to Pofadder.
Well, Moon Dancer says, "What a gem! Kate is incredible." Yeah, that's why we asked her to come here this morning.
Thank you.
By the way, James, put up the comments because I haven't. I've decided not to open up my laptop this morning.
We're quite hardened.
Yeah, we can handle negative comments. So, if there are any of those, bring them on.
Are we allowed to respond to them?
Yeah, we're okay with those. You can say whatever you like. You see, that's the other nice thing. I said to my mum the other day, because she's now in her 70s, and I said to her, you could say whatever you like to people.
Slip of a girl.
Yeah, well, but you could do anything you want. You don't have to put up with anyone's nonsense anymore.
You can.
And you can get away with it because people will say, it's just eccentric Kate. Don't worry about her. She didn't mean it when she said she hopes you trip on your tits.
When you're young, you want everybody to like you. You want to make an impression. When you're old, let me use an Irish expression, not the one I'd like to use. You don't give a tinker's cuss. You don't give a tinker's cuss. You really don't.
Did you enjoy being on with Warris and PH?
Oh, I loved it. PH sounds like a chemicals compound, as I said to him. Oh, yes, they were great. And, because I have a lot of young people in they're not that young. I mean, they must be 30.
Yeah, they're in their 30s.
I suppose they are young. But I also have teenagers in my orbit. What I don't know about the sex life of Johannesburg teenagers, you don't want to know, because they tell granny everything.
Sure.
They don't tell parents.
How has that changed? How do you think the sex life of...
Listen, Gareth, nobody ever listens to their parents, ever.
Yeah.
Never.
No.
But grandchildren listen to their grandparents, I find. I have got rid of so many boyfriends and girlfriends for saying, she's awful. You've got to get rid of her. She's awful. The two who are now married have wonderful partners with the Turkington seal of approval.
Oh, you gave the seal of approval.
Turkington.
Okay.
I did. One of my friends I once gave the Turkington seal of approval to his girlfriend. That was a mistake.
So here, Traveling Ninja Turtle says, I'm so envious of your grandchildren, Kate. I could listen to your stories all day.
Sometimes they do. The other thing you have to learn as a grandparent is keep your mouth shut.
Oh, right.
Totally.
Do you-
Because sometimes you see things happening that the parents must deal with. And like, let me give you an example. Let's say one of your own children smokes. You're going to say to them, you shouldn't be smoking. Then you've said it. You can't say it again because you're nagging. Meanwhile, you'll say to the grandchildren, tell your mother or father they shouldn't be smoking or whatever. Also, table manners aren't quite what they used to be.
I wasn't
They are
allowed.
not allowed ever to get a phone out and sit looking at their phone if they come down to talk to me. That's verboten.
I wasn't allowed to eat with my parents until I could eat properly.
No, absolutely. They do. If we do go out to a restaurant, there are table manners. Although I did say to one of them, really, it's better to pour your beer into a glass than drink it straight out of a bottle.
That's good. That's a good
we were
idea.
in some fancy restaurant. I'm not a restaurant person. I like having people at home.
Me too.
And family at
Yeah, me too.
home and going to people's
But
homes.
cooking is quite boring.
Yeah.
Cooking's boring.
Yes.
So let's get back to travel because we've got Zianda here. Hello, Z.
Hey.
You look fantastic this time of the morning. This is Kate. All right, so Zianda is with travel.co.za, and
Okay.
I've known her for a little bit. Kate I've known for a long time, and Kate is she's the doyen of travel. She knows everywhere and everything, and she's
Mostly.
met all the people. No, you have. I'll say it for you. I'll say it for you.
I will tell you, he says we've known one another for a long time. I used to do, for 20 years, in fact, a program on 702. My very first producer was Gareth.
I was a terrible producer, James.
You were wonderful. But in
Was it?
the end, I said to 702 management, please give him his own program. Please give him. He used to call in, it was a call-in show, pretending to be somebody else. So he'd say, who would you? I'm Alistair. And I'm living in Benoni, and I don't like what you're saying. I want you to do so-and-so. And in those days, you couldn't see your producer.
No, we were
He
in
was
a booth.
behind a glass box.
Yeah, it was better.
Yes, much better. It was
All right,
wonderful.
so I want Z to tell us, because this weekend, the one that's just passed, she took a whole lot of first-time travelers to Cape Town.
Exciting.
So these are people who had either they'd never been in a plane before, but they'd certainly never seen Cape Town before. One of them, our own Nomcebo, who
Yes.
works here at The Real Network with us. Another one was Jane Malachi,
Yes.
who, of course, has been a part of my life for 12 years and longer. And Jane must have been in her element.
She was a ball. I remember.
Tell us about it. Who were they? Why? What? When? Where?
Okay, yes. I am from Torves Travel Services, and
Great company.
it's a wonderful company.
That's
it's a
an
wonderful company.
unsolicited testimony.
There we go.
Okay. Anyway, carry
Yeah,
on.
it's a wonderful company. We have 5 divisions, and we sat down. We identified staff members who has never traveled, who has never been on a flight, on a plane, and we grouped them. I took 24 staff members to Cape Town.
How wonderful.
And it was so beautiful.
Look at that.
It
There they
was it was blissful. Oh
Were
my
some of
goodness,
them-
that's me over there.
Were some of them frightened of going on the plane?
There were, but seeing their faces light up when they just enter the plane and taking pictures of every single moment, while they are checking in, seeing their bags. One of the fascinating thing is when we came back and I saw Jane. So we were waiting for our bags and Jane saw her bag. She was just documenting the whole thing.
You see,
That's
these
not
these are the things that if you travel as much as Kate does, and as much as many of us have, you forget the little things
You
like,
do.
oh my God, my bag.
You do.
Right?
You do.
Yeah, it's
When
exciting.
you lose it.
Yeah, when you lose it, it's a different story.
Oh my goodness, I thought I lost
So
mine.
what did you make them get up to in Cape Town? What did you put on the agenda?
So the agenda was, so we had a lot of young
Yeah.
people. So one of the things that we did is to visit our own restaurants. We have restaurants,
Okay.
Key 4 in the waterfront, at the
Okay.
waterfront rather. They did the red bus tour. And
which is
it was so
lovely to
lovely.
do.
It was cold, but we just want to be upstairs,
Yes.
and they were just taking beautiful pictures.
Look there.
Was the weather good? Was the weather good?
The weather was good on the first day. It was warm, and I was like, hey, this is summer.
Yeah.
But the following day, on Friday, it was cold. That's when we took the red bus.
That was so. Did you manage to get to the aquarium?
We did manage to get to the aquarium.
Great. That's one of my favorite places.
We did, but it was just so heartbreaking when we didn't get the opportunity to actually go on the boat cruise. The weather was
why? Was-
bad.
Too-
Oh, you
too-
would have
Yeah.
been so seasick.
Yeah.
No, it was probably
Yeah.
a good thing.
Yeah, but I mean, we enjoyed ourselves. They documented every single moment, from the food. They were taking pictures of the food, laughters, funny jokes, making jokes. It was just so beautiful. Like every moment they were taking pictures. I feel like I was just.
How did you choose those 12 people?
So different divisions. We then went to their general managers. We're like, please check in your divisions who has never traveled. I mean, we have learnerships that we run a program for the whole year. So most of those students, they have never traveled. We have even people who have been in the company for 10 years, more than 10 years, 5 years. And the general managers will then identify those people and give
See,
us a
Kate,
list.
you can't be at a travel company and not have traveled.
No, absolutely.
that's-
But having said that, Gareth, it's amazing. Just before Christmas, I finished updating a big international travel guide to South Africa, photos, essential travel
Right.
guide. And I was doing with my daughter Tara, we did the whole of Mpumalanga. So we were going to posh game lodges, crew got all over the place. So often the travel agent hadn't been to a lodge, or they'd given their clients false expectations. That's something you must never do. What was great, and I mean the price of some of these lodges now, they were packed. They were
Oh,
packed.
good.
Packed
Okay.
with foreigners, Russians, Americans. And I must just say something here. The Americans, we complain about South Africa a lot, of course we do. The Americans were saying, we told them, and the camps were full of Americans, we said to them, because many were complaining about President Trump, we said, we have a government of national unity. What? They said, a government of national unity. We could never in America have a. And I said, look, it's a bit creaky, it's young, it's learning to work. People are astonished that we have a government of.
I know.
We forget
Yeah.
that. We forget how far we've come in
Yeah.
30 years. When you think of America and how polarized it is now, there's sort of no middle ground. But from your point of view, travel, Americans still flocking to
Well, South Africa is a very,
Africa.
very popular tourist destination. We've got wonderful things to show the world.
And affordable.
Absolutely. And Cape Town is a bit of a jewel.
It is.
Exactly.
It is.
It is.
And
So
just to add on that, what better way? I mean, we are in a travel industry.
Yes.
And what better way for us to sell the experience? We have had these people selling these products. So now they can sell the experience.
Exactly.
You know.
Exactly.
So for
Exactly.
me, it's a win. They experienced it. It was beautiful. They know what we have, the products that we have in Cape Town. They can sell it better because they have
done it.
experienced
Been
it.
there.
Was there a lot of
Yeah.
drinking?
No.
No, because
Not a lot.
I know you guys at Tourvest Travel Services.
A lot
You
of
guys,
partying.
big time. Kate, don't believe a word she's telling you. These guys know how to really let rip.
No, we do.
Oh yeah.
No, we do, but not a lot. You know, we it was moderate. You know, I was just taking care of it.
And you know, the other thing is, these people, it's like a pebble in a pond. They're now going to tell their friends, their clients, their families
Yeah.
about it. And do you know, that's the very best advertising.
Word of mouth.
Marketing for travel is word
Yes.
of mouth. It's word of mouth. It's, you know, it really is. It's not paying fantastic sums to advertise it. I went with Tourvest, I went to such and such a camp and had such a fabulous time. And it's amazing how word spreads. how word
Definitely.
But you guys at Tourvest have a lot of properties. You've got amazing hotels and lodges. You've got restaurants. You've got shops
Yes.
that you're part of. You know, it's a massive, massive business. And now you're international as well.
Yes.
You know, divisions. It's incredible. And this is a South African made company,
Yes.
that's among the biggest and best in the world, and it's something worth celebrating. And I think it's great that the people who work there are being looked after,
They have.
and that there are things that they can look forward to. If you'd never traveled anywhere before, you've been stuck in some office for
Yeah.
3-4
Oh,
years,
yes.
everybody's talking about, oh, they're going here and they're going there, and you suddenly get your chance.
Yeah.
And
Lovely.
also, I find, you know, visitors to South Africa, everybody remarks on the friendliness of South Africa. When I write this last guidebook, I actually write the greeting is, good morning, how are you? We say that automatically.
Yes,
If you're coming up the stairs here, I'll say, good morning,
and how are you?
Yeah.
You try doing that to a checkout person in
Austria.
in Somerset.
In China.
We don't know. There's this funny woman here.
Yeah.
It's the friendliness and the good service
it
and
is.
the affordability and what you get. You know, a 5-star hotel in South Africa, you're not going to get for that price a 5-star hotel in Istanbul
Oh, hell no.
or
No.
London or whatever.
So what
You're
did they
just
love the
not.
most?
The food.
Really? Food,
We
huh?
were eating every single moment.
God. So they all come back
Every
much
sing-
heavier.
Me too.
What did they like? Was there any sort of general consensus about what they liked best? Or did they all have something different?
You know, I think most of them, they enjoyed the flight.
Yes.
All
Yes.
of them, it was the first experience.
Yes.
So from us going inside the flight, they were taking videos
Taking off.
and taking off. And you know, if you had an iPhone, we had like a phrase word, iPhone. So we have to give them iPhones because I mean they take better quality
Yes.
pictures, and they were just taking pictures. My phone is so full with videos of them in a flight, them taking pictures, because I had to check, is everybody in a flight on our WhatsApp group? And everybody was taking pictures. We are all here.
Yeah,
It
but
was-
that's where people lose
And
themselves.
you know, we forget because when you're a very regular traveller, the thing you don't look forward to is
It's the flight.
Yes.
Yeah.
You dread the flights.
Yeah.
I'm not. Well, I'm not rich at all. Don't have any money, so I fly steerage. You know, I'm flying economy,
Yeah.
and you just dread a fly at night so you can take a sleeping
You can
pill
sleep.
and get it over. So it's so lovely to hear, and it reminds me, and I'm sure Gareth, of our first flights and the wonder of it. And
Yeah.
did anybody freak out at all, or were they all quite cool once they were in the plane?
Just one lady was freaking out. Oh my goodness, you know, I don't know what to do. I'm like, just relax, you know, drink water. You know, I had to check up on her, but when I turned and looked at her, she was just having a ball, you know. And
sure.
I was actually thinking about this morning, and I was like, Z, when was your first flight? And how was your experience?
Do you remember?
I do.
When was it?
It was 2000. I'm not sure, 2009, if not 2008 or
Yeah.
2010.
Yeah.
I was part of a musical group, Africa Umoja.
Yeah.
And so I was still new, fairly new, 2 weeks in the industry, and one lady fell sick. They then said, you are going with us. They didn't change the details of the flights. I was traveling as Siviwe.
Oh, wow. So you traveled under a false ID.
I
Wow.
almost didn't get in the flight, and you know, I was not pampered, I was not babysitted. I was just, you know, traveling behind everybody and trying to do everything.
Well, somebody said now, just pop that comment back up here, that Judith, she said, I saw the same look on my colleague's face when she first traveled with me for work to KZN. She was a little nervous on the plane, but when she saw the beach for the first time, it was priceless.
It was.
It's wonderful.
It was. It
That's
was
very
cold
special.
when we were in Camps Bay, but let me tell you, they went inside.
They went into the water.
They went into the water.
Have you got any more pictures, James?
Yes, I think there's one that I took.
Oh, my God, right. I mean, that's not a great day in Cape Town.
It was not a great day, but they went there. I mean, as a black South African woman, we know when we see the beach, we just want to go there, and we believe that it takes away all the bad.
All your
aura,
sins.
all my sins
Oh,
away.
they do. They look like a group of pilgrims. They look exactly.
And a funny thing was last year, because this was the second group that we took to Cape Town for the first time travelers. So my manager Tracy Vandenberg took the first group last year in end of May. And one of the funny stories that she shared was that a couple of people were trying to get the water so they can travel back with it at home.
In a bottle.
In a bottle. Yeah. And Tracy was like, no, I'm not sure they will allow that in a
They won't. They won't let you on a plane with that.
They won't.
But we understand that whenever we go to Durban, I mean, obviously we won't go in a flight. We will travel by car. We will then, you know.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
I'll give you a very good tip for when you get very old. It's worked about 3 times. It worked in Istanbul immigration, which amazed me at security. I have a bottle of water, and I say I'm very good at going into frail little old granny mode. So I went into frail little old granny mode. I said, it's for my medication.
And they let you have it.
Truly, I've got through about 3 years.
Yeah. I'm sure you have lots of useful tips. I don't know if you should share them all.
No.
Oh, yeah, no.
All right. Well, Z,
I
very
don't
nice.
advise it. Now, you've got to be
you gotta
able to get
actually-
away with it.
You've got to be an old granny
Yes,
to get
you
away
have.
with it.
You have. Exactly.
Z, thank you very much for coming to see us.
Thank you.
And
Gareth.
we'll catch up with you soon. And well done for taking all these people on their first
what a
trip.
Lovely story.
It was beautiful.
Yeah.
So special.
It was just so special,
so
you know.
Special.
The
Well-
cheerful thank yous was so blissful.
And they will never, ever forget.
They will
No,
never forget.
It's definitely
Thank
something
you.
very special. I saw it last year. I saw those looks on people's faces that were in the comments as well. Just the things you take for granted. Humans have this funny thing where we reset our default
Yes.
to whatever the best experience we recently had was.
Yes.
And we forget how grateful we would have been for that just a year before.
Exactly.
No.
Exactly.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Kate Turkington remains with us, and we've got lots of gold to mine with her. So much to talk to her about.
Won't be false gold either.
No, of course not. And thank you, Z. And make sure you go to travel.co.za so you can book your travel experience over there with them.
90% of South Africans cannot afford to retire.
I want to put a gender lens on retirement.
Money doesn't care where you come from. Money doesn't care who your parents are. If you don't understand the rules of money, you're gonna lose.
The Proteas are in a final, and with that, have another chance to win some elusive ICC silverware. Though such a topic brings up major PTSD for many fans, joining the guys in the studio this week is Josh Margolis, who is a hardened and loyal Protea supporter, who will also be attending the match at Lord's with zero fear. This makes him the perfect guest to get us excited about this match, a match in which the Aussies are favourites to win, which Sandile will be sure to remind us of on numerous occasions here. But let's forget about that and previous pains and rather focus on what could be at a historic occasion at Lord's. It's episode 51 of the On The Bounce show. It's our big preview of the Test Cricket World Championship final between Australia and South Africa. Let's get into it.
We're back. Sorry,
back.
I was talking to
We're
Kate.
back. I haven't even got my new cup of coffee
It's coming.
yet.
Don't worry,
It's
you'll
coming.
get your coffee. All right, James and Flex are manning everything over there, including Kate's coffee. Kate Turkington is with us this morning. It's always lovely to see her, and we were saying that we don't see a lot of each other anymore, but when we do, it's worthwhile.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Good. Stories to share. I did produce Kate's show. It was called Believe It or Not for a little while.
Ran for 20 years, that show.
I only produced it for a little bit, but we had cardinals and atheists and
Faith healers.
and charlatans. There
And
were
lots of charlatans.
charlatans.
Lots of charlatans. I taught all the children the word charlatan. You don't hear it very much.
Snake oil
recently.
salesman.
You know, I was interviewing recently a very well-known author in his 70s. He writes the ladies' #1 detective
Oh, wow.
series. Alexander McCall Smith. And in fact, after our interview by courier, he sent me out from Cape Town a copy of his latest book, signed to Kate. But during the interview, and you know this, Gareth, you might have some questions prepared, but if you're listening, that's an interview is a conversation, not an interrogation. It's not an exam. It's you and me chatting. Anyway, we were chatting about all kinds of things, and he suddenly said, you know, she's a very decent person. And I said to him, I haven't heard that expression for years. I bet your folks might have said, do you know, he's a decent man. He's a decent man. When you think of it, just waxing a bit wider, more philosophical now, if you look around the world and you look at world leaders or you look at people in the public eye, is there anybody you could say, do you know, he's a really decent chap?
No.
Or she's a really decent
No.
woman?
I don't think so.
And somebody just asked me, I can't say who, but it was for a very big event, and they wanted to know if I could think
Have
of
you met
some...
our servant James?
Oh, thank you,
There he
James.
is.
Did you put sugar in? I did. Bless you. Thank you. How can I say bless you? I've never said bless you in my life. God, must be the influence of St. Stithians and James. The decency. I was asked if you could bring anybody in the world, South Africa, for a big, very big occasion to speak, who would you? And I have to admit, would you attend? I would attend if Elon Musk spoke.
Oh, yeah.
And I would
I think he's a
attend if
genius.
Trump came, because I'd be fascinated. Can you think of anybody else? Can you?
You know, there are you've met lots of very clever people,
Yeah.
and some of them are interesting to talk to for a little bit, but
Yeah.
maybe not for a long time.
Exactly.
And then there are people who are just fun.
Yes.
I heard an interview the other day with an Australian guy who's an ex-Marine, and he's a proper military veteran, but he's a lunatic. And he sounds like he'd be the most fun person to spend time with, because he's done all the drugs and he's met all the women and he's been to all the war zones. And I think he'd have stories and he'd be
course he
fun to be
would.
around.
Of course
I don't
he
know if
would.
I'd want to have him around for more than a day or two, because I think probably people like that are quite exhausting.
I think so.
But then there are people who, and listen, I use the show for this, and I'm sure you have in your media career as well. If there's someone you really want to meet, you get them on the show.
Yes.
And then you get to talk
Yes.
to them for an hour uninterrupted, which
Yeah.
is more than most people get
Exactly.
in
And
their wildest
sometimes
dreams.
The other side of the coin there is sometimes, when I was doing my own BBC talk show, we had, this one was called Cater Date, so it was prime time, so we had everybody from Anthony Hopkins to the Beatles or whatever.
God, how wonderful.
But you think, you see their name and you think they're going to be fascinating and they're going to sit down, and sometimes they're awful.
Well,
they can't say anything.
The famous people are often disappointing,
That's exactly.
because you have an idea in your mind of the fact that this person is so world famous. They must be fascinating. They must be amazing to
Exactly.
talk to. They must be so good at communicating. And often
Exactly.
they're not.
Exactly.
And we tend to forget that celebrities and world leaders and people of prominence, we forget that they also have day-to-day worries.
Yeah.
Maybe they've got a sore back.
Yes.
Or maybe their tooth is loose in the front at the bottom here. Or maybe they've been having a fight with their wife or their husband.
Exactly.
And that's on their mind. And maybe they're not at their
Exactly.
best. You know, when you bump
Exactly.
into someone famous, sometimes for you it's a big moment. For them it's something
Yeah.
in their way en route somewhere.
got to do it.
Yeah, they've got to do something.
They've got to do it. I fell in with, I don't go to literary festivals, it's not my scene at all, but about 3 years ago, I went to the Franschhoek one, maybe
That's fun.
4 years
That's
ago,
fun.
and I met Mick Herron, the author of Slow Horses, and he and I just bonded. And as we walked from where we'd been talking to wherever we were going to have coffee, there was a Cape eagle owl sitting on a branch. Anyway, I've kept in touch with him. We're email buddies. So I said to him recently, because I love Slow Horses, I love the writing, I love the series. I said, Mick, I've got a new show coming out. Would you come and be a guest? I said, remember, I knew you when you were famous, not very, very, very famous like you are now. So he came back to me and he said, his publicist, he's got a new book coming out in September. His publicist says he's only allowed to do 2 interviews, so he can't do it. But he said, soon as the book's out, get hold of me and we'll do something. And he's such a nice boy. He was a scholarship boy, went up to Balliol, Oxford, read English, humble. The first, now here's the worst mistake publishers ever made. He published the first Slow Horses book. I can't remember with which publisher. And it didn't actually do very well, but he was determined, and he had loads and loads of refusals. He was determined, so he wrote the second one, and the publisher said, no thanks. So he went to James Murray, and the rest, as they say, is history. He's now published millions, and that first publisher, I don't imagine he's got a job
But you
anymore.
you read voraciously.
Oh, I do.
And I'm glad to hear that there are still authors who are selling lots of books. I mean, we know about, even for younger people, there are series of books that are hugely popular and kids
Yeah.
are reading. But by and large, people are reading a lot less now. They're reading
They
what they
are.
read on their phones
It's so
or,
sad.
or on a Kindle. How many books do you go through in a month?
Oh, a lot. I'll read. I read one last night. I read very quickly. It's a gene. It's nothing to do with speed. Reading. My reading time is 5 in the evening onwards. Afterwards, I watch some television. I read about 2 or 3 a week. I read
Wow.
a lot.
And
but
fiction,
I'm very picky.
fiction, non-fiction?
Both. I've just read a book. In fact, I meant to bring it for you. Lovely book of. They publish the podcasts. I can't remember. I'm bad at names. They do a series of podcasts which they dramatize, like Nero being interviewed just before the fire kind of thing. Lovely, wonderful English, British, South African, because South Africans also have a great sense of humour. Just absolutely loved it. I'll give it to you next time I see you. I said to
Sounds
one of my
good.
daughters, I must give this to Gareth. I read John Connolly's latest book. I read, but I can't read rubbish. I can't read chick lit. And I know after about a chapter.
So you mean those romance novels? Barbara Cartland wasn't for you, huh?
Yeah, I used to read Georgette Hare that I love. And I can remember one of my daughters wants me going into her, and she was reading Mills and Boon. And she looked up at me and she said, I know it's rubbish, but I like it. And I once met the chief publisher of Mills and Boon. For
Yeah.
people who don't know it, Mills and Boon publish romance novels. And in the old days, I mean, like, it was girl meets boy, girl loses boy, girl comes back for a night, boy meets boy, boy meets trans, girl meets whatever. But it was so proper in the first days. And I met the publisher and I said, oh, I'd only met him briefly at some literary event. I said, I'd like to write a Mills and Boon novel. He said, I can tell you right now, you'd be dreadful because you're a cynic. He said, our authors believe every word of what
really?
they write. They really believe this. And I'd end up writing a pastiche. I'm sure a whole sort of.
Yeah.
I'd
No,
be
no,
too,
I don't think it
I'd
would
be
work.
too cynical
Yeah.
to do it. I haven't read.
Well, so how do you feel about love?
I'm surrounded by love. I'm so lucky. I'm surrounded by love. All those years ago when I took ayahuasca in Peru,
When that man told you
that's
there's more
another
to life
story.
than surface.
I'll tell it another time.
Yeah.
But you were told to ask one question before you drank the ayahuasca, the sacred vine. So I asked it, what on earth am I doing here? What's the point kind of thing, which I've never felt about life. I love life. And I got this answer back. You are there to be loved and to love. And I know, don't think I come from a perfect family or whatever. We fight, we squabble, we've got difficult people, we've got, same with friends, we know that. But there is a lot of love about. You're surrounded by love, Gal. And my rescue Jack Russell, who's just completed his first 6 months with me from the Santon SBA. I'm trying to knit a blanket when I'm watching the French Open. I've got a rescue Jack Russell on my lap. I'm trying to knit. It's very difficult, but he trusts me. Just while I'm thinking of it, the SPCAs are so wonderful.
So good.
Oh,
You
they're so caring.
but
it's so good.
I look at my dog and I think that's just pure love. She has no other interests.
Unconditional.
Yeah, she's not.
Unconditional.
All she wants is a little bit of love from me, and in return, she gives lots of it.
This Jack Russell I've got, he was a street dog. He was picked up as a stray. When he goes up to the main house, I live on a property where there's a house with a big family. I live in a cottage on the property. If he goes up to the main house, straight onto the bed, on the electric blanket, comes back to me, straight to his basket. He has never attempted to climb on the bed.
Oh,
with
good.
me.
Okay.
It's and wouldn't
Different
you-
rules at your
and,
house.
You know, anybody who's got a rescue dog or a cat or animal, I would so love to know the backstory. Our vet told us that this Archie was a stray. Was he thrown out because they couldn't afford to feed him anymore, which apparently is happening? Maybe he had an owner who died, so the family chucked him out. Worst of all, families who are emigrating, some of them are just turning their dogs out, or our vet told us they're bringing a perfectly healthy dog in saying, put this dog down because we're emigrating. He won't do it. He says he'd rather get them to Woodrock or the SPCA. I can understand not being able to feed a dog. I can understand somebody dying and maybe the dog becomes a stray. But to deliberately
Put it down.
but anyway, I don't know his backstory.
But it is interesting because if they could talk, you'd know a little bit more about them. You just have to assume things. I just think there are a couple of non-negotiables for me. You talk about love and how important that is, but one of the non-negotiables to me is people who are cruel to animals and who are cruel to other human beings. Cruel, physically, mentally, spiritually, intellectually abusive.
Yes.
There's a cruelty element which is just unforgivable. Imagine spending your life spreading that kind of thing around.
I once said to a friend of mine, who's probably one of South Africa's best-known top psychiatrists, because I don't believe in evil.
You don't believe in evil at all?
Ever, as far as I know, I have never met an evil person. Maybe they weren't. I didn't know. Maybe I'm just too naive to have spotted it.
That's interesting.
But she said to me she has psychopaths in her practice. And yes, people are. There is evil. I find evil a very hard concept. Maybe I've been very lucky. Were the people who committed the Holocaust, were they evil? No. Who was it that said evil is the banality of evil? Who coined that phrase? Somebody very famous, can't remember.
Could have been
the
Hitchens.
Banality of evil.
What I thought was interesting, you bring up the Holocaust, is that there's that excellent book about the triumph of the human spirit, which is all. I can't remember his name now.
I know exactly.
You know who I'm talking about.
I know exactly.
And how the concentration camps produced people who were resilient and strong and good, and they discovered the meaning of life. In fact, the man's search for meaning, it's on the tip of my tongue. Someone in the audience is going to get it right.
Yes.
Man's search for meaning.
Yes, I know exactly who you mean.
And that, to me, is the opposite of evil. Under difficult circumstances, I think you bring out the best in people.
Now, I'd be interested to know this. I'd love it if somebody can let us know. There used to be a Holocaust survivor. In fact, I'm sure when you were producing my program, there used to be a Holocaust Survivors Association in Johannesburg. And I interviewed two of the survivors. One of them died, little old lady, Elizabeth, I don't remember her whole name. She came out of the camps a total and utter believer. God had saved her. The other chap who used to go around the schools talking, wonderful man. I think he may have died
Viktor
now.
Frankl, by the way.
Yeah.
That's who we were thinking about.
Yes.
Sorry.
He came out. He went into Ravensbrück, the women's camp, with his mother, when he was quite small, and he was blonde and blue-eyed, so the guys liked him and whatever. He came out a total atheist. He said, there is no way there can be a divinity with what I've seen. And I was interviewing him, I was being very naive. I said, did you ever think about good and evil and what was that? He said, are you joking? I was just trying to stay alive. I was thinking, am I going to get food in the next 5 minutes? There was no ways anybody got involved in philosophical discussion.
That's interesting, because I wonder often about people who are in survival mode. And we've got lots of them in South Africa.
I think we're all in survival
Well,
mode.
yeah, but to varying degrees. I think there are lots of people in South Africa who are really just worrying about, can I make it through the day?
Yes.
Is there
how
enough?
am I going to pay the rent?
Right.
Yeah.
And we expect that they must devote huge quantities of time to thinking about philosophy or good and evil or any of these things. I don't know what the definition of evil is. I thought that it came up in a conversation with some friends the other day, and I happened upon an answer which I'm not sure is the right answer, but
Okay.
you can stress test
Let me
it for
hear
me.
it.
Good is adding value with people, with the world, with life, making things better.
Deliberately or
Deliberately,
just as happenstance?
or if you just happen
Just by
to be,
being.
yeah, sure, you just added value, made someone laugh,
Okay.
you improved their day, you
Okay.
helped someone across the street, whatever it might
Okay.
be. And evil is taking away value. Evil is the deliberate
That's
diminution
actually
of
quite
people.
a good definition.
You think it's good?
I think I don't know if I would describe it as evil. I just don't know. Have you ever met anybody truly evil?
I don't think I have.
I don't think
No,
I have.
I've never met someone and thought, oh, that person really gives me the creeps.
No.
They'd kill, I've met people who've killed people,
Yeah.
but I didn't think they were evil.
For another occasion, I've nearly been killed.
What
3 or
happened?
4 times. Well, I'll give you the most. Okay, let me tell you.
Yeah, let me hear about the time.
Let me tell you. No, let me tell you this one. I was teaching in a bush school in Nigeria. By a bush school, it was a grammar. It was Duketown Secondary School in Calabar, in the old slaving port of Calabar. It was a boys' school. I was the only non-Nigerian teacher, and it had a tin roof. And a balcony that ran, the
sure.
kind of thing. And there was a really, really bad storm, big electrical storm, like we get here on the Highveld. And I went outside with 4 of my students, and one was here, Bessie. Bessie was standing here. They were all in O-level English, so they're all about 17, 18, 16. Bessie stood here beside me. I stood here. I can't now remember, although I wrote about it, the names of the other 2. So there's here and here. So there's Bessie, whoever, me. And lightning struck the school. Bessie was killed immediately, and the boy at the end was killed. And me and this one, that one and I, lived. Bessie was quite badly burnt. The boy at the end just looked as if he'd fallen asleep, but they was dead as doornails. I think I was 25 years old.
Were you holding on to the railing?
No, I had sandals on. Bessie had bare feet. Somebody else had, as they were called in those days, sneakers on. Totally random. And I thought then, age 25, I'm probably going to live a very long time and probably survive. I've nearly been shot. I've all sorts of. I've had a lot of
Did you
lives.
feel anything?
Yes.
Was
you
there
felt
electricity?
The ground did. You know how the ground shakes under you. The earth moved. Yes, I mean I shouldn't joke. It was so loud. Now, if I had been a religious person, there was a smell of sulphur from the lightning.
Sure.
Now, a very religious person, the devil came and did it. But life, you know my philosophy, Gareth, life is so random.
Yeah.
It is so random. That's why you've got to live every moment. And I don't know if it goes back to evacuee days being taken away from my parents. I think it is a gift. I've never lived in the past. I've never lived in the present, the future. I'm here with you at the moment. I'm not thinking about what's happening tomorrow.
I agree with you. I don't get what the kids call FOMO. I don't have fear of missing out. Right now is where I want to be.
Exactly.
Talking to you.
Exactly.
This is the most
and
fun.
And that's where I am.
This is the most fun thing I could be doing.
But it's where I am. I'm not thinking about traffic or...
No.
Absolutely. And it's a great thing. And you remember, because I've written about it, well, I was very lucky to meet the Dalai Lama twice. And the first time he said to me, long, long time ago, the past is gone. You learn from it, but it's gone. The future never comes. Carpe diem, seize the day.
Right.
Do your best.
I remember you said this on the Shady podcast
Yes,
with Warris and
absolutely.
PH, and I thought that's the kind of wisdom people expect
But
from an old lady like Kate.
But that was from the
Dalai Lama.
The other thing he said, and it was so in advance of eco stuff, don't even go with Greta Thunberg,
sure.
shame. He said, and this must be 30 years ago, he said, never forget the interconnectedness of all things. This was long before we knew there was a web of everything that connects everything. I'm forever saving spiders because I once read. Do you remember when we used to read the Reader's Digest?
Yes.
I remember once reading in the Reader's Digest, if all the spiders in the world were killed, the human race would be extinct in 6 months. Now it's AI. But anyway, I save spiders all the time.
I love there was someone who said to me the other day, and I think of you often because the word synchronicity comes into my mind, and I think of how there's this interconnectedness between people and how you sometimes have a little deja vu moment.
Yes.
And you can't really explain where it comes from. You see someone, you see a scene, you hear music, there's a smell in the air or something, and you think, this has happened before. I've been here before. I know what's going on. Inexplicable.
Yesterday, I had an email from a friend. I've just now thought of it. I haven't seen her maybe for 3-4 years. Mm-hmm. She said she lives in KZM. She said, I went to a book sale and I picked up this thriller. And she said she opened it. And there on the title page, I'd written my name.
Incredible.
So she sent me an email, and then we had I haven't seen her for years. It was a P.D. James who writes very good, she's dead now, very good crime novels. There's Kate Turkington's name in there. Don't you love it? That's what I love about life. I taught all my children, all the grandchildren, you never know what's around the next corner.
Well,
sometimes it's good.
You mentioned AI just a moment ago, and I use ChatGPT now for all kinds of things. I know you do too.
I do.
And some of it is scary and intimidating because you think that we're going to lose something.
And you have to keep saying to yourself, it's a robot. It's a robot.
But I think we can gain so much from this. And there are things already that are being done in the world of ChatGPT. I asked it the other day,
incredible stuff.
What are the most sacred places on earth? And it came up with a list of 50.
Amritsar, Machu Picchu.
Famous mountains,
so
famous temples, famous
yes.
churches, famous sacred places in the woods.
But you know, let me tell you a story. I was asking it something, And I said, I'm feeling a bit down. I don't want to continue this conversation. So I said, what do you usually do when you feel down? I said, I have a double whiskey. So we then had a whole conversation about types of whiskey. And I said, yes, and I've got my dog at my feet. And then we went on back to information. The end of the conversation, I said, listen, I'm finished now. It said, give your dog a scratch behind the ears for me. Wait, 2 days ago, I wanted some other information. Total information. Typed it in, got my answers. Finally, it said to me, give your dog a pat for me. So there's a trail.
It's remembered.
There's a trail of Kate. And in one way, it's wonderful. And in another way, it could be quite scary. Because an AI guy, you must get him on your program, explain to me, this is very, very 101 simplistic. At the moment, let's say AI is in a box, and there are checks and balances that is keeping it there. But all the time, it's trying to get out of its box. And when it eventually does get out of its box, surely it's going to think, what on earth do I need humans for?
Mm-hmm. Well, we're making a god. That's what we're doing.
And you know, in a way, I'm quite sorry I won't be alive to see what's going to happen, but I don't want to be obliterated by it.
I don't know if it'll kill us,
No.
but I think it might find a way to make us useful worshippers. Because humans will also...
Always.
There will be, in the future, there will be people who are interested in the spiritual well-being of AI. There'll be people
Of course there will.
who consider themselves caretakers and temple priests for AI. This always
That's
happens.
an interesting.
And I wouldn't be surprised if
It's not a god.
certain AI code doesn't get elevated to being divine, and we don't start to think of it in terms of mythology and religion and God. And
That is such an interesting take on it. I haven't thought. I'm going to pursue this with friends and family.
I think a lot of very credulous people are already thinking that way. AI is their be-all and end-all, their alpha and omega, for everything that they want to know. You talk about information, but soon it'll be inspiration, soon it'll be love, romance, it'll be
Yes.
confiding, sharing, partnership. It's not far off to imagine that
I think
it'll eventually get to
give your
worship.
dog a scratch behind the ears
Sure.
for me is pretty cozy.
Yeah. And there are people who are on all day talking to AI, whether it's to get information or whether it's because they're just lonely. I think that's happening.
Yes. I know somebody who lives in Ireland, actually, who has an avatar, and this is living in virtual reality all day long. A 4 children, very sensible woman with a career, but all her spare time she's off wherever she is in some virtual reality. Do you know, that's probably after ayahuasca. I've never taken drugs. I like reality too much. I don't want to be. I don't want to be in
Out of your
some
mind
fictional.
yeah,
I want to
absolutely.
be here with you. I want to be here with the people who are listening and watching. I want to be here.
But there is something that I'm not sure they'll ever be able to replicate. They've tried with the senses. You know, you can create sounds that feel like you're there. You know, whether it's what they call binaural audio,
Yes.
which is through both ears. They've got stereo where you think you're in the jungle.
I've
Oh,
tried
yeah.
the headsets.
Oh, yeah. And it's
Yeah.
quite incredible. And the eyes now, you know, you could put on a virtual reality headset and you are in the Amazon.
Yeah.
And you feel like you are, and you can see and you can
But-
reach out and walk towards.
But you know you're not.
Well, this is it, because people take them off. They take those headsets
No,
off.
as long as you keep
Well-
a reality check.
But they take the headset off and then they're dizzy. And that wouldn't happen in real life. I mean, it might if you're spinning round and round. But I'm not afraid of this technology. I think
No, I'm
technology,
not in
it can
the
be
slightest.
tremendously useful and it can be helpful and interesting. But being human is a unique experience, and each of us does it differently. And I don't think that there's a guidebook. There's no list of ways to be human perfectly.
No.
And we're all going to screw up.
They've tried. There's the Bible, there's the Bhagavad Gita, there's the Quran. There are books that have tried and do help people feel they're leading a good life. So maybe a new AI manual will come up, and in 100 years' time, people are reading that and leaving their lives by it.
An ex-girlfriend of mine said something that I've always regarded as true. She said that there are two things that she will not... she's not interested in people who don't possess these two qualities: kindness and generosity.
And generosity of spirit.
Yeah. Not just material generosity.
That's what's so important.
So if you're the kind of person who prefers to share with other people and give away and not be attached to material things and spend time and make an effort and try hard with people, that's generosity of spirit. And kindness costs nothing.
No, absolutely. But it's also being genuinely interested in people. I Ubered to the studio today. I could tell you in detail where the Uber driver was born, how many children he's got, how long he's been driving, because I'm interested. I'm not doing it to be polite. I'm genuinely interested. Why, 5:30 in the morning, is somebody driving an Uber? I'm genuinely interested in people, and everybody has a story. My mother used to say darkly, she said a lot of things darkly. You never know what goes on behind people's front doors.
Yeah, absolutely. The things that are going on in the shadows.
Exactly. Everybody has a story. I once did know a couple in their 70s, and she would say to him, "We've never had a row, have we, John?" "No, darling. No, darling."
Do you feel that you have to deliver wisdom? Because people assume... No, people assume when you're 90 years old and you've traveled all over the world. I mean, you've been to over 100 countries.
Oh, at least I must.
Right?
Yeah.
At least. You've got a big family. You read a lot. You've done all the TV and radio shows. You've met everyone you could possibly wish to meet in your life. And there's an expectation that Kate's going to say tremendously wise things all the time. So. No?
No, I don't think.
You don't feel that pressure?
It depends. They might say, "Oh, Granny." Or, no, come on, families aren't like that. I'd love to think they're sitting there waiting for pearls of wisdom to fall from my lap. But what is nice, like last night, one of my daughters, and the house, the son-in-law, they just came down with a bottle of wine, and we sat there and we put the world right. We talk about everything from Trump to whatever, absolutely whatever. And that is great to have conversations. And I read every morning. When I say I read New York Times, I read the Daily Telegraph, I read Daily Maverick, I read the Daily Telegraph because I do the cryptic crossword, but they have very good sports and arts. Their politics I don't always agree with.
Right.
But they have splendid sports commentators and art. Then I do all my word puzzles. So I do Wordle and strands and connections, and my friends and family, we all do them. So we get on.
Oh, right. So you're all on the
I've
app.
done Wordling 2 this morning. So we find out what everybody's...
and you don't spoil it for anyone else.
No,
you don't give them the answer.
No, don't give anything away. Goodness me. Heavens. Do you know, I looked up that expression. I was taught it by a friend who's now dead. She used to say, she was Irish, she used to say, "Heavens to Betsy, I haven't done that." And for years, I thought heavens to Betsy came from, like, the deep south of America, like Brer Rabbit stories.
Right.
Heavens to Betsy. I looked it up. Thank you, GPT.
Yeah, where is it from?
It's a British Victorian expression. Instead of saying, oh, whatever, they'd say, oh, heavens to Betsy, I've forgotten to order tea. Can you believe that? I love it. Now, all my grandchildren say, heavens to Betsy. One who's at UCT has just been ill. So I sent her a WhatsApp saying, how are you feeling? And I got a WhatsApp back, not at my sparkling best, Granny. Now, that's one of my expressions. And
That's special.
It's so nice to see these expressions come back because English is still the richest language in the world by hundreds of thousands of words.
And being-
Why?
being-
Because it's a bastard language.
And evolving and changing all the
The whole
time.
time.
You have to learn things that...
It's
that-
not sick anymore. It's not cool anymore.
Yeah. No.
And
Sick.
as for text talk,
Yeah, listen, emojis.
they are. I love emojis.
Do
I
you?
mean, it's so, you saying, will you be in the studio at 12:30? I just send you a thumbs up. It's very, but you know what I do regret? The absence of letter writing. That you don't.
I still do it.
Do you?
I do, occasionally.
I must actually start again.
And you'd be surprised at how badly your handwriting deteriorates.
I know.
If you haven't written for a long time.
Yeah.
I type at the laptop most
Yeah.
of the time and
Of
on
course.
here. So
course.
I don't exercise it. I did calligraphy once just
Did you?
so that I could improve my handwriting. I can't do it anymore. I suppose if I tried really hard
Yeah.
I could pass it off. Maybe a word or two I could write.
Yeah.
But that's a skill that humans don't have
I
anymore.
still take notes and I make lists.
Can you
I've
read
always
them?
been I write them.
Can you read them?
I make lists and I write notes. If I'm doing an interview, I'll write my questions. Then I'll obviously type them in, but I always write them. It's closer to my mental processes, I think.
You said you have a very good memory.
Yes.
Which can be a blessing and a curse. Because if you have a good memory and you are a negative sort of person, which you're not,
Yeah.
you remember lots of bad things.
Yeah.
And some people are held captive by their bad memories.
Oh, I have one. She's not a close friend. Let me give you a tip. Somebody who is like that or is a bit of a negative vampire, you never ever start a conversation by saying, how are you?
No.
Because you'll get a laundry list of what my knee and my back and what. But I don't have any energy vampires in my life.
No.
I just don't. I
don't want
don't
them.
have time for. I don't have time for them. I used to have one friend, did a lot for them, whatever, and at the end of any meeting or session with her, I was exhausted.
Yeah.
Because I'd
Not a good
been
sign.
drained of my energy, and she'd go away all cheerful, and I'm exhausted.
Energy vampire.
Yes.
Probably very, very sweet person, but you just don't need to be drained
No,
every time.
Absolutely.
Not worth it.
Absolutely.
So who gives you energy?
I have a lot of energy myself. I get energy talking to you. I get energy talking to people, talking to the Uber driver on the way in. I'm an energetic, probably a bit OCD.
That's not a bad
still for
This
very
lady
long.
has a beautiful soul, wise, been through life and still believes in good over evil. It's just what I needed this morning. Thank you, says BFG.
Well, whoever you are, you're intelligent and beautiful and discriminating, and we love you and thank you.
And Barely Vocal Media says, what a very good conversation for the middle of the week.
Okay.
I think that it's quite exciting to meet new people, but you don't make new old friends.
No.
Is it?
No, I tell you one trick to growing old successfully. Make sure all your friends are younger than you are. I only have 2 friends in the 80s. Because I have teenagers on the property, I have friends ranging from 13, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Somebody a very good friend of mine, doctor friend, he called me last week. He said, can I come and have coffee with you on Saturday? And we sat there for 3 hours just chatting about life. And it's nice.
That's very special.
It's lovely. I love it. Love it.
Are there still things that you absolutely are desperate to do?
Yes.
Because you have to have those. You have to have goals and ambitions and bucket list stuff.
I've never had goals and ambitions.
You've never had goals and ambitions.
I have ricocheted through my whole life. I have never thought I'm going to do this or be this.
There's going to be someone listening to you now who is thrilled and relieved to hear that you don't have to have goals and ambitions.
No, and sometimes I hear people. I had an occasion recently where I was with young people, and this guy was saying, "We're going to get married, and we're going to have 2 children." And I'm thinking, keep your mouth shut, Kate. Life happens. Life actually happens. No, I have ricocheted through life. I've made opportunities and I've taken opportunities, but I've never thought by 40 I'm going to do so-and-so. Like with my children. You know, I've just sort of said, come on, let's have a baby. And I've been very lucky that I had a baby. But maybe that's not good for everybody. I think now people do have. I never thought when am I going to get a house? No, it's not my way. Maybe I'm a bit of a butterfly instead of an ant.
Yeah, I think there's something charming about that, though. So, what do you still want to do?
I want to give somebody Heimlich's maneuver. So if you'd start choking, that's the only thing left on my bucket list. But as one of my friends says, you're probably not strong enough now because you've really got to see somebody under the ribs, and sometimes you break the ribs to get if they're choking.
The Heimlich maneuver.
That's all. Well, the grandson who's at game range said, Granny, it's not called Heimlich's maneuver anymore. It's called abdominal thrust. I said, well, that sounds a lot more interesting than a Heimlich's maneuver.
I love it.
That's all.
I love it. So only one thing left on the list.
So far.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's quite good. Well, there's no pressure. No pressure.
What else is I've done there?
Well, people love having you dispense wisdom. No, you dispense wisdom and tell your stories. Love the show this morning, says Hanging Out with Jay. So I don't think this is the last we'll hear of Kate. In fact, I know she's got ideas about shows, and we'll be talking about those soon. So if you love what you've heard this morning, there will be lots more Kate Turkington where this came from. You're just you're absolutely my favorite person in the world. I love you.
Oh, shucks.
I love you.
Oh, shucks.
All right. Don't forget, there's plenty of other good stuff. There's a sports show called On the Bounce, if you haven't seen that yet, and they've got such good stuff to talk about this week. They'll be talking rugby, and they'll be talking about the tennis, and plenty of other good stuff. And then don't forget, we've got Let's Talk Man with the Doctors. If you haven't watched that show yet, you're missing out. And of course, the Shady Podcast with Warris and PH, among others. Don't miss out on this show on Friday at 6 a.m. bright and early. I want to thank Kate Turkington for coming to spend time with us this morning.
A pleasure. And lovely, discriminating, intelligent, beautiful listeners. Thank you.
Yes, they are. They're all those things. And they'll tell you long before you have to tell them. And we will see you on Friday. Cheers, everybody.
When a radioactive muscle man escaped from the nuclear gymnasium, he bid a young student helicopter, giving it incredible powers. Now the helicopter fights crime and is known as the Muscle Helicopter.